Hello, welcome to Raza Studios, and today we will be discussing the story of Eleceed's protagonist, Jiwoo. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos on webtoons and manhwa. Enjoy! Overview. Jiwoo is the protagonist of the manhwa, Eleceed. He is the only disciple of Kayden and the second individual to have electrokinesis. However, his main ability is super speed. He is an unaffiliated Awakener and has gone to the Awakened Academy with sponsorship from the Shinhwa affiliation. Background. Jiwoo spent most of his youth lonely because of his anxiety toward unintentionally uncovering his ability to others. He was additionally alienated by his classmates, who regarded him as a monstrosity when he once exhibited his power before them. His family likewise moved a ton in the past to stay quiet about his ability, which simply further added to his disengagement. Therefore, he dreaded his own power and tried not to stand up to other people. The very first companion he made was with a stray cat, which prompted his love for felines today. He takes care of the stray cats around his area consistently. In spite of the fact that they don't have names, he cares deeply about them. He takes care of a pseudo-awakened cat that was experimented on by Dr. Deline. He right now lives in an enormous house dwelling in the Shinhwa domain. He is a second-year high schooler. His mentor is Kayden, who began living with him after he saved his life one evening. Kayden alludes to him as unnecessarily genuine, and regularly remarks regarding how kind-hearted he is. Similar to Kayden, Jiwoo isn't keen on joining an awakened association and is happy with being an unaffiliated Awakener. He is companions with Jiwoo, Wooin, and Subin Lee and has made associations with probably the most remarkable Awakeners in South Korea. Appearance. Jiwoo has light cream hair that is short and straight. He has golden doe eyes that are frequently seen sparkling at whatever point something invigorates him. At whatever point he sees something adorable, his eyes sparkle, and it becomes flushed. He has a slim and muscular build from Kayden's training. His face is said to be naive-looking and kind. He is frequently seen smiling. His school uniform comprises of a dim overcoat, a light blue tie, a white polo shirt, and tennis shoes. His academy uniform comprises of a dark track coat with red trim, dark track jeans, and tennis shoes. In numerous ways, his difficult and cutthroat mentality as an awakened profoundly takes after that of his guide, Kayden, and that similarity has kept on developing more the further he has strolled down his way as an awakened. In any case, in contrast to Kayden and other awakened, Jiwoo stays modest and has an exact comprehension of how he can win. Jiwoo likewise stays faithful to his obligations and is exceptionally faithful to those he thinks about as his loved ones, particularly to Kayden. He refuses to leave them behind and is obstinate enough that nobody can change his mind after he has decided on something. Powers and abilities. As an awakened, Jiwoo has better strength, endurance, toughness, and faster healing than the average human. These capacities can measure up to those of an Olympic-level athlete. Jiwoo's main ability is his super speed, which he has enormously fortified with the utilization of force control. Because of this ability, he likewise has elevated reflexes, great intellectual capacities, and dynamic vision. He is astoundingly gifted and can develop his powers rapidly, which even amazed Kayden, who himself is a well-known genius. Because of Kayden's mentorship, Jiwoo has become fairly proficient at battling and observing his opponents. He is additionally somewhat of a tactician when battling, fit for dissecting his adversary's abilities and battling style to think of reasonable counterattacks. He has additionally refined his command over his powers enough that he would now be able to seclude his power into a solitary part of his body to convey an exceptionally devastating hit to his opponents. An example is during the battle with Jiwoo isolated his power into his fist to duplicate the force in order to break through Jisuk's guard. Super speed. As his main ability, he can move extraordinarily quickly. At his fastest speed, he can move quicker than the naked eye can see. Also, he has been demonstrated to be fit for utilizing both super speed and electrokinesis at the same time. Presently, he can utilize his speed at an exceptionally undeniable level for around 6 seconds. Electrokinesis. A force control procedure instructed to him by Kayden. Jiwoo has been displayed to unknowingly utilize electrokinesis in battles, but pitifully, to bargain extra harm to his adversaries. However, he has a frail handle of the ability. He has utilized the ability intentionally when backed against a wall, for example, during his battle against Suchin Kong. Animal control. Because of a misconception on Isul Ju's part, Jiwoo has been forced to act as though he can communicate telepathically with his cat, casein nitrate. Despite the fact that his battling abilities are weaker than Suchin Kang's, his various abilities have acquired him a position as an awakened generally on the same level as Jisuk, Subin, Wooin, Suchin Kang, and Gangsok. Plot. The manhwa begins with Jiwoo buying snacks and toys for his stray cat companions, when suddenly he notices a child run onto ongoing traffic to get back his soccer ball. All hope seems lost for the kid when suddenly Jiwoo uses his super speed to save the kid in an instant. Jiwoo leaves the kid with his mother before anyone can figure out what happened. Later that evening, Jiwoo is seen feeding the stray cats. His stray cat friends get Jiwoo's attention and bring him to find a bloodied abandoned cat. Jiwoo takes the cat back with him and gives the cat first aid. While trying to find out the gender of the cat, he hears a voice other than his and looks around, just to find out that the voice came from the cat. Freaked out, Jiwoo quickly drops the cat and backs up. The cat eventually identifies themselves as Kayden, who turns out to be a human who was able to turn themselves into a cat. To make sure that Kayden is 100% healed, Jiwoo decides to bring Kayden to the vet. After visiting the vet, the two encounter a strange cat that seems to exhibit monster-like abilities. Jiwoo recognizes the cat as one of the strays that he feeds on his way from school. The cat chases them with killer intent, forcing the two to run away. After finding an alley to hide from the cat, Kayden suggests that the best thing for them to do is to not get involved. However, Jiwoo wants to save the cat and decides to go back and save it. Before going, Kayden supplies some of his power to Jiwoo in order to help him incapacitate the cat. Jiwoo, now radiating with power, uses his newly given power to battle the cat. With his super speed and the power he got from Kayden, he was easily able to stop the cat and knock it out unconscious. After bringing the cat home to tend to its wounds, Jiwoo immediately begs for Kayden to not expose Jiwoo's secrets about his power. Kayden is surprised by this request because just like Jiwoo, Kayden is also an Awakener, revealing to Jiwoo that there are thousands of people with abilities just like him. This news moves Jiwoo to tears. To find out that he's not a freak and that there are others like him out there, removes a huge burden on his shoulder. During their conversation, their guest abruptly wakes up in a fury, pouncing all over the place, and finally escapes Jiwoo's house. Jiwoo and Kayden chase after the cat in order to prevent it from causing harm to others. After finally locating the cat, they notice a man with the cat, to which Kayden reveals that the man is an Awakener also. Kayden suggests that they leave, revealing that the guy is performing illegal tests on the cat and that if they try to take on this man, that Jiwoo could possibly die. Even after Kayden's warning, Jiwoo doesn't call quits and instead decides to use his super speed in order to quickly snatch the experimented on cat and escape without harm. They make it back to Jiwoo's place where Kayden scolds Jiwoo for not heeding his warning. He reminds Jiwoo that he needs to be careful now because that guy will be looking for this cat. After the eventful night he had last night, Jiwoo is sound asleep in class, reminiscing about his past. Jiwoo is yelled at by his teacher for snoozing in class, telling him that class is over. Jiwoo quickly gets up and hurries home to feed his cats. Before leaving class he runs into one of his classmates, Wooin. After taking a needed nap, Kayden teaches a little force control in order to help him protect himself. The next day after school, Jiwoo sees Wooin being harassed by some bullies. He steps in to help Wooin, causing the bullies to focus on Jiwoo. The bullies are unable to hit Jiwoo with his speed. Eventually, their leader Jisuk calls a quit and the bullies decide to leave. Jiwoo returns home and after seeing that the cat is doing better, he and Kayden decide to bring it to the vet in order to check his health. On their way to the vet, unbeknownst to them, Wooin notices the cat that Jiwoo is carrying with him. The next day while feeding strays, Jiwoo is approached by Wooin and he notifies Jiwoo that the cat that he was carrying the other day is his. Jiwoo, ecstatic, hurries back home to grab the cat and return it to Wooin. As Jiwoo approaches with the cat, he notices how hostile the cat gets as it sees Wooin. Skeptical about whether Wooin is the real owner, Jiwoo refuses to hand over the cat, causing Wooin to attack Jiwoo, revealing himself to also be an Awakener and an accomplice to the man from earlier. Jiwoo is able to dodge Wooin's initial attacks, but eventually, Jiwoo is caught by Wooin and knocked out by Wooin. He awakens not long after and follows after Wooin but loses him. As he looks for Wooin, he is found by the guy from the other night, identified as Dr. Deline. Dr. Deline quickly attacks Jiwoo and is prepared to kill Jiwoo for interrupting his research. Wooin quickly comes out and tries to get Dr. Deline to leave Jiwoo alone, letting him know that Jiwoo isn't tracking him and that instead, he's just a kid. Immediately Dr. Deline attacks Wooin and tells him to stay out of his way and let him finish the job. While Dr. Deline is occupied with Wooin, Kayden arrives looking for Jiwoo. Jiwoo, concerned for Kayden's safety, tells him to run away. Kayden smiles and tells Jiwoo not to worry and transforms into his human form, surprising Jiwoo, Wooin, and Dr. Deline. Kayden spares no time and quickly defeats Dr. Deline, and from Dr. Deline, Jiwoo learns that Kayden is a well-known Awakener in the awakened world. Before Kayden can dispose of Dr. Deline, Jiwoo tells Kayden to spare Dr. Deline and that he's okay. Kayden and Jiwoo leave Dr. Deline alone, with Kayden warning the doctor to leave Jiwoo alone or else. Kayden, Jiwoo, and the cat return to Jiwoo's house, where Kayden treats Jiwoo's injuries. Not long after, Kayden begins to brightly glow, and after the flash of light surpasses, Kayden is seen to have returned to his cat form. Apparently, when he uses too much power, his body automatically transforms back into a cat now. A few seconds later, Jiwoo receives a call from the Shinhwa associate requesting to speak to him after discovering him. The guy appears to already be at his house, standing outside of the door requesting entry to his house and to speak to Jiwoo face to face. The man turns out to be Shinhwa's vice president, In-hyuk-gu, and after recently finding out about Jiwoo's identity as an Awakener, he and the Shinhwa Association would like to make his life easier as an Awakener. He starts off by showing his own ability and explaining to Jiwoo that it is the Shinhwa Association's responsibility to show the basics to recently aware Awakeners in their territory, in order to lead them down the right path as an Awakener. Jiwoo, not wanting to be rude, tells In-hyuk about his own Awaken ability, to which In-hyuk laughs at saying that Jiwoo telling his ability to him is a rookie mistake. He advises Jiwoo that as an Awakener, he should try to hide his ability as much as possible for his own safety. After giving his brief introduction, In-hyuk leaves Jiwoo, notifying him that he will stay in touch. Kayden tells Jiwoo that games and fun are over and that today officially begins his life in the awakened world, notifying him that he will need to become stronger in order to protect himself in this harsh world. After bidding Kayden and the cats farewell, Jiwoo travels to school and wonders whether or not Wooin is okay, worried about his well-being after their encounter yesterday. During homeroom, Jiwoo is approached by the same bullies he saw bullying Wooin. The bullies decide to take the fact that Jiwoo is injured and begin beating him. As they beat him, one of the bullies mentions Wooin, saying that he's in the same homeroom and that they should get him too. Jiwoo, angered by this, decides to get back up and fight back regardless of his broken leg. He uses his speed to outmaneuver the bullies and beat them all. The teacher soon arrives, surprised that Jiwoo was able to take on and beat all 3 bullies by himself. That night, Jiwoo begins his training with Kayden by using the force control that Kayden showed and his super speed to practice his close combat skills. After school the next day, Jiwoo is approached by the bullies again, but this time with their leader Jisuk, who requests that he and Jiwoo fight one-on-one. With no other choice, Jiwoo decides to fight Jisuk, but is surprised to see how fast and strong that Jisuk is. Jisuk tells Jiwoo to use his full power, notifying him that he is also an awakened and that he heard about Jiwoo from In-hyuk. Apparently, Jisuk is from the same group and he wants to see how strong Jiwoo is in order to find out where he ranks. Although Jiwoo tries his best, he is greatly outclassed by Jisuk, with Jisuk only stopping the fight after he finds out that Jiwoo is injured, notifying Jiwoo that they will finish their battle when Jiwoo is completely healed. Jiwoo, spared due to his injury, stands in frustration, mad at his weakness. Back at home, Jiwoo is noticeably seen sulking by Kayden. Kayden suggests to Jiwoo that instead of sulking, he should train in order to get stronger and that he will help him. In preparation for his fight with Jisuk, Kayden pushes past his limits and in order to improve his physical ability and his awaken abilities. The next day, Jiwoo is visited by In-hyuk, who has come to apologize for Jisuk's behavior, explaining that Jisuk is the brother of the chairwoman and that he has a tendency to do as he pleases, but assures Jiwoo that Jisuk will be punished. In-hyuk, believing that Jiwoo was shaken and scared after being forced to fight with Jisuk, tries to comfort him and tell him that he doesn't have to fight Jisuk. Jiwoo surprises In-hyuk when he insists that he wants to fight Jisuk, telling In-hyuk that he wants to test his own strength. After hearing Jiwoo's words, he decides to set up the duel between Jisuk and Jiwoo, leaving Jiwoo to go back to his training. A few days have passed and the day of his duel with Jisuk has arrived. In-hyuk drops by his house to pick him up and escorts him to the Shinhwa Associate building. Jiwoo is then escorted to the chairwoman's, Ji-young-yu's, office, where he officially meets her for the first time. She introduces herself and asks him whether or not he has changed his mind about fighting Jisuk, to which Jiwoo replies no. When asked why he still wants to fight when there is a low possibility of him beating Jisoo, Jiwoo responds that he doesn't care about winning or losing but instead wants to stop being a coward for once and finally find out how strong he truly is. Jiwoo is brought to the Shinhwa training grounds where a late Jisoo finally arrives and they begin their battle. Due to his lack of experience, Jiwoo is quickly blown back after Jisoo blitzes him right after the whistle blows. Jiwoo is able to soften the blow in time and quickly jumps back into the battle by using his super speed to try and hit Jisoo. He's able to close in and attack Jisoo, causing him to just defend when Jiwoo increases his speed to new heights. Frustrated, Jisoo blows back Jiwoo with his wind ability and traps him in a cyclone of sharp winds, heavily injuring Jiwoo. Jisoo and the viewers believe that the battle is over, just to be surprised when Jiwoo is seen standing again ready to fight. In-hyuk tries to stop the fight, not wanting Jiwoo to be injured any further, but Jiwoo insists on fighting on and his fight with Jisoo continues. Jiwoo tries to keep close to Jisoo in order to overwhelm Jisoo with his speed, but Jisoo uses a wind wall to keep Jiwoo back and injure him if he gets too close. Jiwoo attempts to close the distance but he is thrown back again and bloodied and lying lifeless. Yet again, Jiwoo stands again, not wanting to stop the fight until he can't fight anymore, notifying In-hyuk and Jeong that it's his decision and his fight. Knowing that he won't be able to fight for much longer, Jiwoo decides to put his hope into one last huge attack. After dodging Jisoo's wind attack, Jiwoo moves at max speed behind Jisoo and directs all his energy to his fist to blow Jisoo away. Jiwoo finally collapses from fatigue and thanks Jisoo for the great fight. After the fight, Jiwoo is taken to Shinhwa's medical room in order to get his wounds treated. Amazed and surprised by his last attack on Jisoo, Jeong asks Jiwoo if he knows a man by the name of Kayden. Jiwoo did not want to expose the identity of Kayden. Instead, he asked her who Kayden was, and acted clueless. Right after she asks the name of his cat and Jiwoo almost exposes Kayden but is luckily able to come up with a made-up name for his cat, casein nitrate, which angers Kayden. The day after, Jiwoo is notified that Wooin and Jisoo are fighting at the training ground and is escorted there to see the fight. Jiwoo tells Wooin the truth and notifies him that Jisoo did not do anything to him, but that instead, he agreed to fight Jisoo. After the fight, Jiwoo, Jisoo, and Wooin are seen hanging out together in the infirmary, with Jiwoo happy that he has companions to hang out with. 2 days later, Jiwoo is officially cleared and allowed to go home and he invites both Jisoo and Wooin to spend the night at his place. The three begin to build a friendship and the three are seen hanging out more and more after school. A few days later, Jisoo and Jiwoo notice that Wooin has been acting weird and that he has been missing. The two go to Wooin's place to see what is wrong with him. As they explore Wooin's place, which seems to be an abandoned house, they run into Sungha Park's men from the Awaken Union. They seem to also be looking for Wooin, which leads both Jisoo and Jiwoo to look for clues to find Wooin. Eventually, they find Wooin at a secluded area being carried off by two mysterious men, who we find out are the Klein brother, who seems to be kidnapping him. Before they can escape into the car, Jisoo quickly shreds it apart with his wind blade, and the two move in to try and save Wooin. The two parties waste no time battling against each other for Wooin. As Jisoo distracts the brothers with a huge wind attack, Jiwoo takes that opportunity to use his speed in order to attack one of the brothers holding Wooin. Jiwoo is able to grab Wooin and zip away to cover in order to see how Wooin was doing. Wooin warns Jiwoo that these guys are the real deal and that he should run, but Jiwoo refuses to leave his friend behind and decides to fight. The pair are quickly found by one of the brothers and the two decide to team up. As Jiwoo tries to fight the brother with his close combat, Wooin attacks the brother from afar in order to keep the brother from fighting back. That plan doesn't last long as the brother begins to overpower Jiwoo and Wooin. As the two lay defenseless and tired, the brother begins to burn and torture Jiwoo until Wooin tells him where his professor is. Wooin, not wanting Jiwoo to get hurt, agrees to tell the brother about his professor's location. However, Jiwoo stops him. Jiwoo refuses for Wooin to sell out his professor for his sake and is prepared to die. As the brother attempts to finish off Jiwoo, Kayden comes to his aid and prevents the attack. Kayden greatly outclasses the brother and is about to kill the brother. Jiwoo stops him and asks for him to spare him, not wanting Kayden to kill the brother on his behalf. Kayden decides to listen to Jiwoo's words and goes to check up on the two. When suddenly, the brother uses the time that Jiwoo and Kayden used to talk and prepares a barrage of fireballs. Kayden acts quickly and knockouts the brother, leaving the brother lying lifeless on the floor. Kayden leaves quickly as Jeong and Jisoo arrive to help Jiwoo and Wooin. Wooin explains to Jiyoung they were knocked unconscious, but when they woke up the brother was also passed out. Jiwoo, Jisuk, and Wooin are treated and placed in the infirmary again, and Wooin thanks the two for helping him. After healing up, the three are seen walking home from school when they encounter a girl who appears to have beaten up Jisuk's old friends. The two end up fighting until Jiwoo yells for them to stop, and we find out that the girl's name is Subin Lee of the Awakened Union and that she is looking for Wooin. Jisuk doesn't reveal to Subin the location of Wooin, and instead Jiwoo, Jisuk, and Wooin make their way to Jiwoo's house. The next day, they run into Subin, who is angry at Jisuk for lying about not knowing where Wooin was. Before she can get Wooin, Jisuk threatens to call Subin's father, forcing Subin to run away. The next day, Subin approaches Jiwoo by himself and demands Jiwoo to call Wooin over. Jiwoo refuses, stating that he will never sell out his friends, and Subin threatens to hurt Jiwoo if he doesn't call Wooin over. Wooin finds the two arguing, and Wooin decides to step up and battle Subin since she's so invested in him. Jiwoo stops the two before they can battle in public and convinces the two to fight at the Shinhwa training grounds. Subin and Wooin battle, with their fight coming to a draw after Jisuk and Subin get into an argument. Subin acknowledges Wooin's strength and asks for him to join the Awakened Union, but he refuses. Later at Jiwoo's house, Jiwoo asks Wooin why he declined, to which he responds that he wants to be responsible for his own choices and that being in a group won't allow him to do so. Following his daily routine of feeding stray cats, he runs into Jisuk and Wooin, who seem to have developed Jiwoo's habit and are found feeding cats also. The trio runs into Subin on their daily route, and she looks at them funny for feeding cats every day. The following day, Jiwoo is invited by Inhyuk and Jiyoung to join the Awaken Academy. Jiwoo tells Kayden about, and Kayden tells Jiwoo that it will be a great opportunity for him as a newly awakened. After school the next day, Jiwoo comes home to find two unconscious men and finds out that these men were at his home to find out information about him. Jiwoo follows Kayden's advice and he notifies Inhyuk about the intruders at his house. To prepare for the academy, Jiwoo continues his training with Kayden until he hears a ring at his door. Jiyoung and Inhyuk visit Jiwoo and notify him that the intruders were Shinhwa men and that they had already taken action to correct this mistake. Jiwoo hangs out with Jisuk and Wooin, and they find out that Jiwoo's house got infiltrated by Shinhwa men because they were unhappy that an unaffiliate like Jiwoo is getting the opportunity to go to the Awaken Academy. Later that night, Jisuk returns to Jiwoo's house to tell him not to worry about stealing anyone's opportunity and that they need unaffiliates like Jiwoo, so he shouldn't worry about stealing someone else's spot, which helps lighten Jiwoo's consciousness. Jiwoo arrives at the Shinhwa building in order to meet the rest of the Shinhwa student representatives and gather information about the academy. One of the representatives, Jeho, can't accept Jiyoung's decision to have Jiwoo join as a Shinhwa associate and challenges Jiwoo to a fight. Jiwoo accepts his challenge and the two battle at the training grounds. Jeho underestimates Jiwoo and puts his guard down and is quickly defeated by Jiwoo. Angered, Jeho demands a rematch, claiming that he wasn't ready, but Jiwoo refuses and states that underestimating your opponent in a real fight will get you killed in the awakened world, so he accepts this battle as a win for himself. At home, Jiwoo is overjoyed about his first win as an Awakener and thanks Kayden for his help in making him stronger. The night before the first day of the Awaken Academy, the boys go to the store to grab a bunch of snacks and have a sleepover at Jiwoo's house. As they arrive at Jiwoo's house, they join up with Subin, who ends up staying over and hanging out with them. The next morning, Inhyuk drops by to pick up the four and together they make their way to the academy. While familiarizing himself with his room, Jiwoo hears a knock at his door and is approached by two unaffiliated Awakeners, Jungsu and Taeyoung. They introduce themselves as unaffiliated Awakeners and request to know his and Wooin's ability. When asked why he wants to know, Jungsu responds that unaffiliated Awakeners need to stick together in order to survive here and that the other unaffiliated Awakeners already agreed to do it. Jiwoo and Wooin still refuse to tell them about their abilities, which angers Jungsu. He threatens to beat both of them if they don't tell him their ability. However, he is quickly dealt with by Jisuk when he overhears the conversation, causing the two to run away. Later that morning, Jiwoo and Wooin meet Jungsu and Taeyoung plus two more students, Jeho and Gangwoo, at the unaffiliated classes instructed by Giwook Jang. As their first assignment, the students are told to introduce themselves and their ability. Eventually, it's Jiwoo's turn to reveal his ability, but Jiwoo continues to refuse to share his ability even with his instructor. Surprisingly, Giwook commends Jiwoo for refusing to tell him his ability and instead has him run 2 laps instead. After finishing his laps, Giwook has the students spar each other in order to see how good they are. Jiwoo ends up having to spar both Jungsu and Jeho, and because of his training with Kayden, they prove to be little to no problem for him. The next day, the students are told to run continuously until Jiwook tells them to stop, and he has Wooin and Jiwoo run twice as much since they're ahead of all the students. After running vigorously every day without any force control training or any explanation for why they're running, the students begin to complain to Jiwook. They ask why can't they be trained like the affiliated students, causing Jiwook to get a little fed up with their complaints, stating that they are nowhere near the same level as the affiliated students. Bummed out at Jiwook's words, the unaffiliated students begin to question their training and worry that they will never be picked up by an affiliated group. Jiwoo insists that they trust in their instructor and they should have faith in the fact that he knows what he's doing. It seems like their words got through to Jiwook, and he has the students learn force control. While teaching Jiwoo his force control, he is astonished by how quickly Jiwoo is able to learn the force control. The students are extremely happy that they are able to finally learn some force control, but their joy quickly disappears when Suchin Kong and members of the Baekta Association walk in and begin bullying and demeaning Jungsu. Jiwoo quickly steps up in Jungsu's defense and lectures the three that they shouldn't look down on any of the unaffiliated because they're unaffiliated and weaker. The Baekta members begin to harass Jungsu more and start threatening Jiwoo until Jaehyuk and Boyoung enter and stick up for Jiwoo, warning them not to mess with a fellow Shinhwa member. Jiwook de-escalates the situation and stops Suchin and Jaehyuk from fighting and tells all the students to go back to their dorms. Before reaching his dorm, Jungsu pulls Jiwoo to the side to thank him for sticking up for him and apologizes for being too weak to stand up for himself. The next day, the unaffiliated students seem to be more friendlier towards Jiwoo, asking him if he slept well and saying good morning to him. They respect Jiwoo much more for speaking out for all the unaffiliated Awakeners, and at first thought that Jiwoo was being naive, but now they see that he genuinely is a nice person and cares. During class, Jiwook brings in Inhyuk and Sungha in order to help him train the students more efficiently. Knowing that the unaffiliated students have to go against the affiliated students and that their only hope in winning falls in the hands of Jiwoo and Wooin, he takes the two to the side to access their strength. He is surprised at how strong both Jiwoo and Wooin are and has confidence that they can win with these two on their side. The unaffiliated continue to train for their scrimmage against their affiliated peers in 6 days. Later that evening, Jiwoo goes on a walk with Kayden and they come across Isul-ju for the first time. She finds Jiwoo's cat, casein nitrate, very interesting and tries to use her power in order to mind control him. However, she just gets a handful of poop with a side of disappointment. She is intrigued by the fact that she cannot mind control Kayden and assumes that Jiwoo can also mind control animals and asks for him to join her association. Jiwoo gets additional training from Subin as they battle to help Jiwoo prepare to take on Suchin. They don't battle for long, with Jiwoo getting a few hits on Subin. Throughout the rest of the week, Jiwoo trains his body, his force control, and his close combat capabilities until the day of the scrimmage arrives. The two sides stare at each other as Suchin makes a threat towards Jiwoo, claiming that he's dead meat. The first couple of fights show how greatly outclassed the unaffiliated students were. One after one, they get brutally defeated by their affiliated opponents. Jiwoo begins to lose hope and begins to worry until Wooin steps up and sets the tone for his unaffiliated comrades. Wooin is able to greatly outclass his opponent and proudly tells Jiwoo and his peers to keep their heads up because the fight isn't over. Jiwoo, encouraged by Wooin, steps up and prepares to take on Suchin. Jiwoo is able to surprise Suchin with his super speed and get a few hits at the beginning of the fight. However, Suchin uses his gravity ability to make Jiwoo heavier and slower and manages to grab him and inflict damage on him. The fight seems to be Suchin's victory as he squeezes Jiwoo more and more, until Suchin lets his guard down for a split second, allowing Jiwoo to escape. Jiwoo, barely able to stand, continues the fight, determined to see the fight through, as Suchin uses his gravity abilities to create a gravitational wall around him in order to prevent Jiwoo from blitzing him. Jiwoo uses the last of his strength to move so quickly that he is able to rip a hole in Suchin's wall and land a devastating blow on Suchin, knocking him out. Jiwoo, barely able to stand, leans on Wooin and is praised and thanked by Jiwook for winning his fight. Jiwoo is sent to the infirmary where he is visited by his peers and by Inhyuk and Jiwook. Inhyuk and Jiwook notify Jiwoo that after he heals up, that the instructors want to see and test his animal control ability that they have been told about. After fully healing, Jiwoo takes a stroll with Kayden and struggles to think of an idea of how he can fake his animal control ability. He discovers Isul and says hi, but she quickly leaves after her hiding spot is discovered. The next day, Jiwoo is put through a couple tests in order to test his animal control ability, but the instructors grow more and more skeptical of his ability. As the last test, Jiwoo is told to have his cat engage in combat against one of the instructors. Surprisingly to all the instructors and Jiwoo, Kayden furiously attacks the instructor and knocks them out, forcing Jiwoo to pull Kayden away from the instructor. That evening, Jiwoo runs into Isul again and they talk about whether Jiwoo has decided to join her association or not. Later that night, Jiwoo is called by the head of Beko, Sungek, to discuss his plans as an Awakener later. He asks Jiwoo to be his disciple and for Jiwoo to allow him to train him. Jiwoo declines Sungek's offer and tells him that he already has a mentor and that he is the strongest in the world. Sungek is surprised but respects Jiwoo's decision. Jiwoo tells Kayden that he declined Sungek's request to be his apprentice, which surprises Kayden also because Kayden also remarks Sungek as one of the strongest Awakeners that he has ever encountered. One evening as Jiwoo is walking with Kayden, he sees Jisuk, Subin, and Isul hanging out, and as he approaches, he overhears Isul exclaiming that she has never been interested in Jiwoo ever. Jiwoo simply remarks that he's never been popular with girls and Isul ends up running away in embarrassment. Jiwoo is then approached by Suchin's grandfather, Dusik Kong, and given the opportunity to join Baekda since they see promise in him. Just like with the principal, he denies the offer to join Baekda, and this angers Dusik. The next day, Jiwoo wakes up late for his first class back while practicing his force control and hurries to class. Everyone is overjoyed to see Jiwoo and they congratulate him on his recovery. Their reunion is cut short after members of Baekda tell all the students except for Jiwoo to leave the room. Dusik returns again requesting for Jiwoo to reconsider his decision to not join their group, but Jiwoo doesn't concede. Dusik takes Jiwoo's decision as an insult and decides to torture him until he decides otherwise. Jiwoo remains stubborn and does not accept the offer, causing Dusik to inflict pain on him. Giwook, Inhyuk, and Sungha discover that Jiwoo is in trouble from the other students and enter the room in order to stop Dusik. Dusik claims that Jiwoo is a traitor and that if the three interfere then they will be making Baekda their enemy. The three prepare to engage regardless, but before they engage in battle, Sungnik enters and tries to stop Dusik. He asks Jiwoo to become his apprentice so that he has no choice but to step in and help him. Jiwoo continues to refuse and Baekda continues torturing him with Sungnik preparing to attack Dusik. Eruptively, Kayden enters the room to save Jiwoo, encasing him in a force field to keep him safe. He announces that Jiwoo is his apprentice and that he will not back down from any opponent even if it's Baekda. Dusik takes his warning and leaves. Jiwoo apologizes to Kayden for having him save him again and for also making him announce that he's his apprentice. Kayden tells Jiwoo not to worry and that everyone was going to find out eventually. The academy comes to an end for the semester and the students are lined up for the last time with Giwook. The students thank Giwook for everything he's done for them and they're glad that they had him as their teacher. Before leaving the academy, Jiwoo is approached by Gangsok Choi from Beko, who requests to spar with Jiwoo the next time they meet after seeing his fight with Suchin. After his quick talk with Gangsok, he sees Kayden talking with Sungnik and finds out that Kayden is leaving for Jiwoo's safety. Sungnik notifies Jiwoo that with Kayden around him and people knowing he's Kayden's apprentice, there will be foes who will use Jiwoo to get to Kayden. Jiwoo that they promise to get stronger so that Kayden will not have to worry about him. After returning to his room he sees Kayden, back in his cat form, who tells Jiwoo that he just made the whole thing up to fool Sungnik. Jiwoo is dropped off at his house and says goodbye to his friends, and after being away from home for so long, he is greeted joyfully by his cats. In class, Wooin and Jiwoo find out that Subin now attends their school and is in their class. After school, Jiwoo and his friends walk home together until they run into a bully, Sokchul Chu, who comes to fight with Jisuk in order to see who's stronger. He proves to be no challenge and Jisuk manhandles the bully. That night while the four friends hang out at Jiwoo's place, Jiyoung drops by to talk to Jiwoo. She thanks Jiwoo for being a good friend to Jisuk and tells Jiwoo that because of him, Jisuk has changed for the better. One day at home, Kayden notifies Jiwoo that there are Shinhwa agents outside his house and they seem to be protecting Jiwoo. Jiwoo, Subin, and Jisuk notice that Wooin has been missing and when they go to his house, they find out from Wooin that Dr. Deline is missing. Jiwoo tells Wooin to let him, Jisuk, and Subin help him look for Dr. Deline and the group make their way to go and find Dr. Deline. While searching, Jiwoo feels and hears a huge explosion and rushes over to find one of the Klein brothers causing a disturbance. While the Shinhwa members try to contain the destruction, Jiwoo begins to take on the Klein brother. Eventually, Jisoo and Subin join Jiwoo, and the three work together to take on the brother. Just like before, Jiwoo engages in close combat with the brother while Jisoo and Subin attack the brother from a distance. While Jisoo and Subin charge up and prepare to unleash their ultimate attacks, Jiwoo outmaneuvers the brother and at the last second gets out of the way and allows Jisoo and Subin to encase the brother in a block of ice. It seems as if they have won, but the brother is able to regain consciousness and melts the block of ice. The brother unleashes a huge heat blast, which Subin is barely able to block in time. As the vapor dissipates, the brother makes an attack towards Subin and attempts to grab her. Luckily with his super speed, Jiwoo thwarts the attack and forces the brother to back off. He attempts to pressure the brother more in close combat, but his same methods don't work again, and this time Subin jumps in for his aid this time. The three try their best to work together, but the Klein brother is easily overpowering them. Noticing that they are losing, Jisoo mouths to Jiwoo to run away and tells him to get away. Jiwoo, refusing to run away, musters the last of his strength to use a last-ditch effort attack. The Klein brother also prepares to fry the three and begins to charge his own attack. Jisoo helps support Jiwoo by using his wind ability to help Jiwoo move faster as Jiwoo prepares to move at his top speed. He moves faster than he ever has before and hits the brother with a powerful hit. The Klein brother is seen lying on the ground unconscious, crisp, and burnt with Jiwoo huffing and puffing in exhaustion. With no time to rest, Jiwoo calls Jisoo and Subin telling them that they need to find Wooin and see if he's safe. Luckily for them, it turns out that the Shinhwa and the Awakened Union found Wooin and the four friends are placed in the infirmary. Wooin thanks the three for their help with Jiwoo, asking Wooin if he was able to find Dr. Deline. He responds with a smile and says yes, which makes Jiwoo glad. Jiwoo is told by Inhyuk that Jeong wants to talk to him and the two make their way to her office. Before they can leave, they are stopped by Sokchul, who is looking for Jisoo. Eventually, Sokchul ends up challenging Jiwoo to a spar after learning that he is also an Awakener. Inhyuk tries to stop the spar from happening, but Jiwoo decides to accept the spar with Sokchul, stating that in real combat Awakeners out there won't take it easy on him because he is injured. The two head to the training ground with Jeong, Inhyuk, and Baekda members watching as spectators. As soon as the whistle goes off, Jiwoo quickly knocks out Sokchul, sending him sliding to the feet of the Baekda members' feet, leaving everyone in awe. After the fight, Jiwoo talks to Jeong where she discusses his battle with the Klein brother and praises him and his friends for being able to pull it off. After their discussion, Jiwoo and Jeong go out together to get some snacks and food for his friends. After they finish eating, Jeong walks Jiwoo home. Jiwoo thanks Jeong for always helping him and tells her how much he admires her. He invites her for some tea, but she respectfully declines and walks home with a smile. Jiwoo is continuing his training with Kayden, learning a new force control that Kayden made specifically for his super speed ability. Jiwoo quickly learns the force control and thanks Kayden for making a force control for his ability. Jiwoo goes out running that same day and stops at his usual spots to feed stray cats. Jiwoo is approached by Suchin, who challenges Jiwoo to a rematch. Suchin tells him that the fight will be in 10 days and that the fight will only be stopped when one party can no longer continue. After Jiwoo returns home that night, he sees Jeong at his house and she already knows about his and Suchin's rematch. She wants to help Jiwoo with his fight and help him train. Jiwoo meets Jeong at the Shinhwa training grounds where Jeong mimics Suchin's gravitational ability using her wind in order to help out Jiwoo. The day has come and it is time for Jiwoo's and Suchin's rematch. Off the bat, Suchin creates a huge gravitational wave that increases the gravity in the training grounds. Suchin traps Jiwoo for a quick second, but Jiwoo quickly escapes and moves in to attack Suchin. Before Jiwoo's attack lands, Suchin uses his abilities to propel himself away from Jiwoo's assault. Jiwoo proceeds to follow Suchin and continues to apply pressure in close combat. Eventually, Suchin taunts Jiwoo, challenging him to stop holding back and for them to finish the fight and begin to prepare his skill. Jiwoo speed blitzes Suchin while he's preparing his skill and launches him away, knocking him out, making Jiwoo the official winner of the rematch. One of the spectators, Suchin's father, Supal Kong, is not satisfied with the outcome and accuses them of cheating and keeping Jiwoo's identity as an Awakener. Jeong simply insists that they are doing their best as Jiwoo's sponsor and that Jiwoo is a very talented individual alone. Supal continues to pry and question Jiwoo's ability until Kayden makes an appearance and claims responsibilities as mentor and for his ability. An angered Supal takes Suchin and Beidou leaves the Shinhwa building. Kayden tells Jiwoo that he's proud of him and the two of them walk home together. While Jiwoo and Kayden practice force control, Jisuk, Subin, and Wooin come to Jiwoo's house to discuss his battle with Suchin and congratulate him. This is also the first time that Jisuk and Subin meet Kayden in person, to which Subin remarks how handsome he is. Jiwoo introduces Kayden as his mentor to Jisuk and Subin, and the five of them have dinner together. The next day, Gangsok comes to Jiwoo's house to confirm his fight with Suchin. After confirming that Jiwoo has won against Suchin, he asks for Jiwoo to also spar him too, to which Jiwoo accepts immediately. Later that night, Jiwoo is returning home from buying some more cat food, when he comes across a mysterious man. Jiwoo walks past the man until he suddenly calls out his name, shocking Jiwoo. Confirming that he has the right person, the mysterious man then asks Jiwoo where Kayden is, scaring Jiwoo. That concludes the life of Jiwoo Seo. If you are interested in action and superpower webtoons, I suggest you give Eleceed a chance. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video and make sure to share it with friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.